I don't know if you felt the same as I have recently. This is Annie Poole, Whispers from Your Heart and Soul. And I was thinking about all the changes in life, especially with the AI explosion. And it really got me thinking about what is important in life. And so this is called life. What do I know? So, what's your direct connection to life? And I'm not talking about people or relationships or even AI. I'm talking about your heart connection. How do you get quiet and drop into that heart space? Because I believe that the heart intelligence is far greater than the intelligence of the mind, although we do need the intelligence of the mind. So often we are half in and half out of life, or is that just me? Because we've got our mind on the past, on something that we did yesterday that we think, oh, we shouldn't have done that, or something that's worrying us or preying on our mind, or we've got something about days ahead, something that's coming up that's really, really important. Family member going for chemotherapy, or something really important like that. So, how do we truly connect with what matters to us? How do we stay in the right lane for us and not get distracted by all these other things that are going on? I'm hoping to find the right answer myself today by talking to you. I'm hoping it unravels for me as well as it unravels for you. What's it like to be you right now? I heard that question yesterday and I thought, where do I start? What do you care about? What's one thing that's true about you? And again, I thought, I sat with it for ages and then I got distracted. Life is so distracting. Or is that just me? I know one major thing that happened to me in my life, and I've had a few major things that have happened, but one that happened to me 3 years ago was that my son transitioned by suicide. He completed suicide. And the door I came into life by suddenly closed on me. And in the space of the last 3 years of coming to terms with that, the person here before you now, the Annie Poole before you now, is a hugely different person. And I'm just trying to find out where I am and hopefully helping you along the way. And the good thing is that I've had a lifetime of coaching and counselling and looking at the psyche and looking at the spiritual place of the intelligence of the heart. So, what happens when we're out of touch with life? Well, I went through a huge phase of being out of touch with life, and I don't think I'm properly back in it yet, although I am clearer about the steps to take to do that. So, when we become disconnected with life, we tend to use a lot of distractions in our day to help us along the way. And it's almost as if we are, we've got our head in Facebook, or we're overeating, or we are spending a lot of time out of the home instead of at home and relaxing. And there's nothing wrong with any of those. It's if we are over using them that we lose our independence, we lose our true connection to who we are. And usually what's happened is there's a fear underneath. I mean, when I first lost, well, he isn't lost, I believe in the afterlife. When Ant first transitioned, when he first left this physical earth, I was so lost. And yet I knew in my heart of hearts that I didn't want to stay in this place. There wasn't anything there for me. For a person who's been connected to people and families and children in huge educational leadership for donkey's years, and then in coaching and counselling and community work, I felt totally cut off, but I did it to myself. The fear of going back out into the world with my grief and being visible with that grief. I couldn't stop myself crying, and I could stop a conversation like that if I said I had a son who completed suicide. Everybody went into themselves, and I'm not blaming anybody. We're not very good at talking about death and the afterlife, and we're really not very good at talking about suicide, but that's for another time. So rather than focus on the circumstances of my grief and just checking on my notes because I lose my place now and again, the circumstances of my grief and the reactions that people said to me about suicide or their opinions around, and without even knowing him, without even knowing the long-term mental health concerns that he went, mental ill health that he went through. So until today, I never asked myself this, and I'm just going to check on the name of it was Mel Robbins who did a podcast, and she interviewed Mark, forgive me if this isn't how you say his name, Nepo or Nepo, and he does a book about awakening, and he asked this question, and I broke down and cried, and I want you to hear it too in case you haven't seen the Mel Robbins podcast with Mark. And the podcast is called, pay tribute to her, the exact words you need to hear today, and if it feels like nothing is working. So this is a quote from Mark. Dear soul, that's my bit. How might the peace of God within you stretch and stand more fully, so that being who you are more completely will break the shell of this confinement? I wish I'd heard that question while I was in my grief. I was well and truly squished into a shell that didn't fit me. And you know what? All the time, because of my understanding of life and that life is about having experiences, not getting lost in them, not living from the experience, I knew that where I wasn't permanent, and that gave me hope. I took a long time to find routes out of there. I think that question, how might the peace of God within you, or how might the peace of spirit within you stretch and stand more fully? Wow. Sometimes the answer to that question is so big, we can't really work it out. And I haven't worked it out with the intellect. It really, really got to me, and it's getting to me now. And I'm going to read it again because I think this question is so important, because it's a growth point. At the point when I was totally stuck and lost in my grief, that question, how might the peace of the divine, the spirit, whatever name you give to that greater intelligence, the peace of God within you stretch and stand more fully, so that being who you are more completely will break the shell of this confinement? I want to thank Mel Robbins and I want to thank Mark Nepo for that question. And I still don't know the answer to it, but I do know this. But what I knew before, which was, my love of books, the way I write all the time, the way I love the sound and the scratch of the pen on paper. I love felt tips. I love designing things. I love creating things. And I know that has to change, and I'm up for it. And I hope you are too. And I'm not working. I am sitting beside a family member going through cancer at the moment and looking for the peace of God within me that can sit with that person. I'm not looking to change them. I'm just looking to recognize that peace of that divine person of me instead of getting lost in the distractions that I used before, which was work, 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 or read, 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 or write, write, write. I'm not looking for those distractions anymore. I'm in my being, standing and stretching more fully. And I don't know the answer to how that will be for that person that's going through that cancer journey and those experiences that chemotherapy bring. So I know my gift is compassion and empathy. I've got a whole universe full of that to share with people. But I know the downside of that is sometimes I don't know where my boundaries lie. But I know that that's a gift. The call of my soul is to share ways as often as possible to help people realistically, not from a theory or a model. And there isn't anything wrong with those. If they work for you, they don't work for me. I know early on in my coaching training, and I've done a lot of coaching training, some of the models worked in the educational establishments where I was. But then they did bend out of shape when somebody didn't quite fit into that model. And so that always got me thinking, where do I start? And the only way to start is from the heart and to be compassionate and to be with that person and to truly see who they are before this mask, before this presentation, to truly see who they are by being present with them heart to heart and listening deeply. I know in the early days of my grief, I couldn't even form a sentence. I was in so much shock. And I had friends who came day after day and sat with me in space, in that grieving space. They met me where I was, and that's so important in a coaching conversation or with a therapist or with somebody in your family member. To be met where you are is one of the beautiful gifts you can offer to another human being. So when was the last time you opened up to life? When was the last time you thought about what made you buzz? Well, most recently, I did an a free AI course. I can't tell you how much buzz that's given me. I would not have thought the answer to the question, dear soul, how might the peace of God or the divine or spirit within you stretch and stand more fully? An AI course. I'm sure that's not all of it, but it's taking me from my old habit, that education, that teacher habit of overproducing, overworking, over creating content. It's shifting me to a simpler way of being. And I think the secondary part of that will be, how else can I live my life? I'm getting curious about it. I'm exploring it instead of being stuck in that rut. I've just shifted a fraction, and the scenery and the landscape is brand new. And so I am using my life as a way of learning how to be in the world. And I'm asking the question, and I'm asking it to you too. Where is my life right now? Is it back in the rut? Or is it going in the right way? I know when I got up this morning, it was freezing here in the UK, and we've had such beautifully mild weather for this beginning of the winter season. And suddenly we find ourselves with frost and ice, and hence the woolly jumper. And it's dark, and it will be really easy to be fed up about that. Now, I remember in the days when I was working, getting up at 4:30 in the morning in the winter, freezing cold, and going to some of my schools when I was an executive leader and helping to shovel snow at, 6 o'clock in the morning so staff and parents and families and children could get in. I don't have that anymore. And I am aware that some of you listening may have to get up and go out really early in the morning, scraping all the frost off your car. Or you may be living in a warm climate, wondering what on earth I'm going on about. But I'm talking about, it's almost like a mini metaphor for a change in life. And I get to choose how I see that. I get to choose from the divine piece of me how to be with that cold, dark, could be miserable, freezing cold morning. And so I have a morning ritual. So when I wake up, I go straight to the heart before any thoughts come in while I'm still lying down. And I just get really present with the divine in me and the divine, whoever, wherever that divine is. I don't know what it is, but coming from that space, and I make sure I've got a really soft lamplight by the bed, and then I've got another one that I can, when I'm ready to wake up, I can put on, and it's brighter. And this is my morning ritual, with a lovely cup of tea or coffee. And I'm grateful that I can go downstairs and I can, I have a home and I have a tap and I can fill the kettle and I can make my lemon and ginger tea, and I get to choose what kind of tea I fancy when I'm waking up. Those are tiny rituals. They're only really tiny. Sometimes I add another one, which is I light a tea light and I come and sit in here in the dark, all swaddled in warm dressing gowns and slippers and things. And I just sit and write dear soul, a dear soul message. Dear Annie, dear soul, well done yesterday for X, Y, and Z. Well done yesterday for getting out in the garden in the freezing cold. Well done yesterday for helping that family member. Well done yesterday for looking after yourself first. It isn't something you often do, but it's a boundary, so well done. Then I might set an intention for the day, or I might just write a poem or doodle. And that's an extra piece of ritual. And to fit that in, I get up a little bit earlier. So back to the start of this, which was life, what do I know? But I guess we don't need to know everything, do we? We don't need to know how we connect to life. We don't need to know how we stand up and stretch in our divinity. We just need to get curious about it and have an open-hearted willingness to be that in that space, ready. And to be okay on the days when we're not. I only had 3 hours sleep on Sunday night, and on Monday morning, I did do the usual things, the three little things that I do in the morning. but I still felt grumpy and out of sorts. And there's only me in the house at that point. So to be grumpy and out of sorts was with myself. And my intention was not to pass that on to anybody else. And so I made sure I did something that I love to do, which is in the garden or writing, and made sure I got into that gentler space, that compassionate space that I give away so easily to others. I gave myself some of that so that I can turn up into my life from that quiet heart space, and I can be fully present from that gentle place that I started the day with, fully present, not worried about what am I going to say to that person, how am I going to deal with that, what if I get it wrong? No, I let all of that go. So the door I came into life by that has changed and it's closed. I feel now that I'm in a massive, beautiful, light-filled hallway with a few doors, and I don't have to permanently go through them. I'm exploring. I'm exploring my life, and I'm laughing at the things I don't know. I've had a few years on this life, in case you can't tell, and they've been glorious. And even Anthony transitioning, I have so much connection with him. That's glorious too. But it's also sad on some days. So this mum, grandma, coach, teacher, community worker, global speaker person is really just Tanny underneath. And that's who I get present with. And if you came to see me, I would want to see who you truly are, heart to heart, and how I can help you find one thing that is really true about you. Take care. You matter.